Hello everybody, I'm Ajit K. Mishra, your course instructor for Essential Life Skills. I'm here again. This time I'm going to talk about a very important thinking skill. A thinking skill that has attracted the attention of everyone globally. And everyone today is talking about this particular thinking skill. You might be wondering what kind of thinking skill am I talking about. This skill is design thinking. Design thinking is one of the most important and sought after skills today. Design thinking is an iterative process in which we seek to understand our users, challenge assumptions, redefine problems, and create innovative solutions which we can prototype and test. Design thinking is one of the most important forms of thinking today when it comes to solving problems. Design thinking is much more than just a process. It opens up an entirely new way to think. And it offers a collection of hands-on methods to help us apply this new mindset. So the design thinking is not just a form of thinking, it is an entire mindset, the design thinking mindset. And that's the reason why it is so very important today. In the era of high quality products and services, design thinking is one of the most sought after thinking skills today because it allows us to think about a variety of things before designing either a product or a service. So it is almost like thinking about the other side before designing a product or a service. It's not that I love this design for this particular product. It may not be loved as much by the users. So if I can take care of the user's perspective, I'm doing design thinking. So along with creative thinking, critical thinking, design thinking is one of the most important skills today. Design thinking revolves around a deep interest to understand the people for whom we design products and services. So this is human-centered design or human-centered engineering, development. That means we keep the users right in front of us before we begin to design something. So we take a great amount of interest, deep interest, to understand the people for whom we are designing. It also enhances our ability to question. You know by now that question contains answers. So if I develop a good ability to question, that means I am simultaneously developing a good ability to finding answers. In design thinking, we question the problem, the assumptions and the implications. So question plays a very, very important role in design thinking. Design thinking proves extremely useful when we tackle problems that are either not well defined or even ill defined or even unknown. Design thinking involves ongoing experimentation through sketches, prototypes, testing and trials of new concepts and ideas. So it doesn't come to an end. That means it always keeps the doors for improvement open. It's an ongoing process. So these are some of the most important aspects of design thinking. Let's take a look at the other aspects of design thinking. Design thinking, interestingly, is solution-based thinking. Most often people belief in problem-based thinking. They generally continuously focus on problems rather than focusing on solutions. Unlike the other forms of thinking, which focus a lot on the problems, design thinking focuses a lot on solutions. So, design thinking gives us the right kind of solutions because of this particular aspect. Let's take an example. Let's imagine that we are stuck on a boat, on a storming sea. The wind is raging, the sea water is splashing the entire boat. We all are drenched in water. It's a terrible night, and there is no sight of any help anywhere. We all are in great trouble. We may begin to think that we are losing it, we are losing the battle of life, we are going to die very, very soon, nobody is going to help us, nobody is going to save us, nothing can be done now. That's one form of thinking. We are focusing too much on the problems. Now the wind is raging, we are being splashed, now the storm is also raging, it's becoming stronger and stronger, and we do not know when it's going to pass. We are focusing on the problems only. And even if we get to see a lighthouse at a distant place, we are not bothered about that particular lighthouse. We are bothered about the problems that we are facing. This is problem-focused thinking. The moment we get to see the lighthouse, if we can engage in some solution-based thinking, for example, how we can reach there, if somehow we can reach at the lighthouse, we are going to get some help. How can we send some signal to the lighthouse? Can it happen? Now we are switching our thinking to solution-focused thinking. That's a difference which design thinking realizes. And design thinking focuses on a solution-based thinking. And that's the reason why design thinking is so very important. I'm reminded of a very interesting quote by David Rock, a design thinker, who says that focusing on problems leads us to the past. Focusing on problems leads us to blame, excuses, and justifications. It's complicated and slow and often drains our mental energy. That is, if we continue to focus on problems. On the other hand, focusing on solutions, however, immediately creates energy in our minds. So it's very, very important first to see what exactly we are focusing on. Are we focusing on problems or solutions? Design thinking has this advantage over all other forms of thinking. On the basis of a study conducted by Christoph Meinl and Harry Leifer at the Stanford University, California, we come to know about the 4 principles of design thinking. Let's take a look at each of these principles. The first principle is the human rule. No matter what the context, all design activity is social in nature. And any social innovation will bring us back to the human-centric point of view. That's one of the most important aspects of design thinking because it goes by the human rule. That's an important principle. The second important principle of design thinking is the ambiguity rule. So ambiguity is everywhere and it cannot be removed or oversimplified. So when we begin to experiment at the limits of our knowledge and ability, we can see things differently, and that is exactly what design thinking does. The next principle is the redesign rule. So all design is a redesign. That means we can always redesign an existing design. So while technology and social circumstances may change and evolve, basic human needs remain unchanged. So that way we are in fact redesigning the means of fulfilling these needs. So all design is redesign. So we reinvent. The same kind of things come back in a new form. The tangibility rule is the fourth principle. Making ideas tangible in the form of prototypes enables designers to communicate them more effectively. If I have an idea, that's perfectly fine. But if I can convert that idea into a tangible form, especially in the form of a prototype or a model, I can always communicate my idea more effectively to others. So that is one thing design thinking helps us with. Design thinking has 5 distinct phases. Let's take a look at these phases. The first one is empathize. Empathy provides us with a critical starting point whenever we do design thinking. The first stage of the process is spent getting to know the user and understanding their wants. If we can understand the perspective of others, the needs of others, remember empathy skills, emotional intelligence skills. Design thinking is based on this principle. This is the first phase in design thinking. We generally start by taking into account the perspectives, the needs of others. The second phase is the define phase. So we gather all our findings from the empathy phase or empathize phase, and then we start to make sense of them. And then we try to overcome the difficulties and the barriers. We also try to see the patterns that emerge. And then we try to locate the big user problem that we can work on or we can solve. For example, if I have spoken to people for quite some time and if I've tried to understand what they're struggling with, I can come up with a certain pattern, a common problem, and then I can pick that common problem, try to solve it. The next stage is the ideate stage. We have already developed a solid understanding of our users, and we have also developed a clear problem statement in our minds. Now it is a time for us to start working on the potential solutions. At this phase, we do so. So we begin to think creatively, and this is exactly where creative thinking plays a very, very important role. And then we try to enter into the ideation stage, a judgment-free zone where we focus more on the ideas with which we can solve that problem. Now we come to the prototype phase. This is phase 4. So this is the phase where a prototype, especially or basically a scaled down version of the product, is developed. And this product incorporates the potential solutions identified in the previous stages, especially in the first 2 stages. So this step is very important in putting each solution to the test and highlighting any constraints and flaws. That means we are testing the prototype, the solution that we have developed. The final phase is the testing phase. We have developed the prototype, now we are testing it. So when we test something, we'll get to know how well it will be received. So when we test something, we'll come out with some great insights about the product that we have designed or the model we have designed. So this is a stage where we test the prototype, and that is how we come to the entire design thinking process. So whenever we develop a product or a service, all these phases play a very, very important role, because any approach to the development of a product or a service can pass through these distinct phases if we are doing design thinking. You may be wondering whether design thinking is meant for you or not. Yes, it is meant for each one of us, because design thinking helps us look at things, look at problems from a very different perspective with a completely different set of approaches. And with design thinking, we can actually devise solutions to the problems which will offer our potential users with a potential solution. And that's the reason why design thinking is so very important. That's the end of this session, and this is also the end of this module. I'm very sure you have taken note of all the things, the thinking skills that I talked about through this entire module, session after session, and you're going to explore all these things on your own so that you develop some great thinking abilities in you. And remember, thinking skills are very, very important life skills, and with the right amount of thinking skills and the right type of thinking skills, we all are going to do extremely well in our lives. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.